Welcome to Wannabe Clutter Free, formerly Wannabe Minimalist, the podcast for busy families who are tired of the chaos, fed up with being overwhelmed, and ready to enjoy life again. Each week, we talk about how to let go of the clutter so that you can focus on the things that actually matter. And it's not just physical clutter, we talk about the mental and emotional stuff too, because if it's holding you back, it's time to ditch it. I share what I've done in my own life to declutter, organize, and calm the chaos, but you won't just hear it from me. There are amazing guests too. It's practical, doable, and simple for those of us that want to be clutter-free. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to the show. My name is Deanna Yates, and you are listening to episode 226 of the Wannabe Clutter Free podcast. On today's episode, I'm chatting with Shannon Leyko about decluttering our sentimental items and how to have those tough conversations with our loved ones when we're ready to let go of our things or when we want to receive fewer gifts but don't want to seem ungrateful. It's a really fun conversation, and I think you're going to love Shannon's positivity. But before we jump in, I want to say thank you for joining me today, and I apologize for my strained voice. I'm getting over both bronchitis and pneumonia, and it is tough. So thank you so much for sticking with me. I have my medicine now, and I am starting to feel a lot better. But can you do me a huge favor? If you enjoy this episode, can you please subscribe to the show so you don't miss out on future episodes? I am still working on that bonus material. Obviously, it's been pushed back a little bit because being sick has made that a little difficult to get recorded, but it is coming and I don't want you to miss out. And also, I want to thank you so much for being part of this community. And if there is something you want to talk to me about, or you have a question about decluttering or organizing or living a better life with less stuff, well, please reach out on Instagram. I am at Wannabe Clutter Free over there, or you can join our private community, the Wannabe Minimalist family group on Facebook. All right, let's learn more about my guest today. Shannon Leyko is an author, podcast host, mother of three, and military wife. Her book, You're Completely Normal, debuted as an Amazon Top 50 hot new release in 2020, and her podcast, Paring Down, has reached the top 5% of all podcasts in under a year. She's a former Miss New York in the Miss America organization, a former professional vocalist, and was also a reality television development producer before working in social media and on her podcast. Her platform, Paring Down, is built around helping people declutter their homes and schedules in order to make room for what matters without judgment, shame, or comparison. I will have links to Shannon's resources in the show notes, which you can find at wannabeclutterfree.com/226. Again, that's wannabeclutterfree.com/the number 226. And now let's get to our conversation. Well, hey, Shannon, welcome to Wannabe Clutter Free. How you doing today?
Thanks. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Oh, I am good. I'm happy to have you here. And we were talking a little bit before this. We're recording right after the hurricane, and I'm sure that will come into our conversation a little bit today. If it doesn't, no big deal. And, just this interesting time of year that we're living in. But before we get into that, can you share a bit about your journey to minimalism and decluttering, and how did your experiences as a military wife, mother of three, and a professional vocalist influence your perspective on simplifying life?
Wow. Okay. A lot of things coming together there. And also, I was laughing. It is a big time of year. I mean, between the election and the hurricane happening, and like the holidays are coming up, and I'm like spinning every single wheel possible in my brain. So it is nice to have a calm, decluttered home. In terms of that, my background, I grew up in a pretty decluttered home. So I'm not like the typical millennial where you laugh that your parents just like had rooms full of stuff, right? But that didn't really come back into play in my life, I would say, until I was in young adulthood. As a teenager and in college, I was a disaster. I was like, let me spend every cent that I have at Forever 21. And the floor of my dorm room is obviously another closet. Like, that's what this is. And then, as a professional vocalist, I moved to New York City to pursue Broadway, and I ended up living in a 250 square foot apartment. So it was a studio apartment. So one room, and my kitchen, it was so cute. I actually miss it so much. My kitchen was just the appliances built into the wall, but they had put French doors in front of it. So you opened the doors to the kitchen, but you didn't take a step forward. There was your stove, and there was no counter space. And it was a wonderful time. I was only 20, gosh, I was 24 at the time. That is the time to live in 250 square feet. But I would say living in New York definitely teaches you that you don't need a whole lot because you simply cannot have a whole lot. And then years later, I met my husband. We got married. He is a self proclaimed stuff guy. And as we know, opposites attract. And in the decluttering minimalist world, that is the case too. And so we usually marry someone with a different threshold of stuff. And I felt incredibly overwhelmed when all of his stuff kind of arrived at the house. And then we had our first son. And as you know, kids come with a plethora of stuff. And suddenly I felt like I was really drowning. On top of that, we ended up moving from Virginia, which is where I'm from, all the way to Alaska because we are a military family. And suddenly we're not only dealing with all this stuff at home, we're now dragging it 4,000 miles to a tiny, like, island in the middle of nowhere, Alaska. And that is, it's kind of ridiculous when you think about it. So while I was in Alaska, the pandemic hits. I end up going from one kid to three kids, and it was kind of a perfect time just to be at home all the time. Also, it's Alaska, so a lot of times you're inside. And so I started really decluttering and getting rid of stuff and recognizing the power that comes with living with less. It was something that, like I said, I had grown up with, but that intentionality behind it and understanding the true, I guess, reason to do it kind of came forth when I lived in Alaska. And so a couple years after that, we ended up moving to Florida, which is where I currently am. And after sharing about my own decluttering experience and my love for organization, I got a lot of feedback from my personal friends online about that. So I decided to start my own platform, which is Paring Down. And that has just skyrocketed. Actually, as we record, today is Paring Down's 1 year birthday, which is fun. Yay! And, in the last year, I now have 184,000 people following me on Instagram, which blows my mind. 60,000 on Facebook. I'm like, where are all these people coming from? But it goes to show that so many of us want a calmer home with less stuff in it. And it's just my honor to be able to kind of spread that message.
I love that so much. Well, and I can see why people flock to you because you just have this great personality. Oh my gosh, it was just so great hearing your whole story and just how, you know, I get that there is a lot that goes into it, but your positivity shows through a lot in that. Yeah, I can see why people are following you. I love it.
Oh, stop. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. But okay, so let's talk about sentimentality and decluttering. I mean, I get that like when you were especially having to move to Alaska and moving all of this stuff, that would be a good indicator to let go. But then when you were there, you said that was when you let go of a lot of stuff. Now, I know a lot of people when they're decluttering, like sentimentality plays a huge role in why we hold on to our things. Now, can you share some of your personal experience of sorting through maybe your sentimental items? Do you find yourself being very sentimental? Curious to hear about that.
Yeah. Yes, I have had a pretty huge experience with sentimental items because I lost my mom when I was 24, actually, while I was living in that studio apartment in New York City. And also, I wouldn't identify as someone who's particularly sentimental. And that's kind of, there's like two parts there. I wouldn't say that by nature I gravitate towards stuff as a source of joy. And I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with anyone who is very sentimental. I mean, I'm sentimental in the fact that I make pretty extensive baby books for all of my kids. And yeah, that kind of sentiment, absolutely. But it was really my mom's stuff and that experience of losing her that was the most challenging for me when it came to letting go of sentimental items. I think because obviously that's so concrete. It's the only, it sometimes feels like those are the only things left of proof, really, that my mom was real. Even looking at pictures, it can kind of just feel like so distant. But when I hold on to her sweater and I know that it touched her real live body, that does something different to me. The thing is, though, when I was going through her possessions, I realized pretty quickly, well, first of all, my mom wasn't a fun stuff or a stuff person. And that did make it easier because I didn't feel like I had the ghost of mom being like, don't throw away my stuff, And that's a struggle for a lot of people. I can't say that I faced that personally, but I realized that by keeping all of it, it was making me feel a little bit sad because of what I said, because it felt like she was kind of in her stuff. And so I had to make the conscious decision that my mom lives in me. She lives in my hands. My hands look just like my mom's. She lives in my mannerisms, especially as I've gotten older with my own parenthood journey. I am like, holy moly, I am my mother. Things come out of my mouth that I forgot she had said. And it's like, it just comes forth, right? You just become your mom. It's so funny. And so I decided she's in me. And if I hold on to all this stuff, I'm just going to feel like that is all that's left of her. And that's not true. That's not all that's left of her. She is more than her sweaters, and she is more than her, china plates and that kind of thing. And so I decided to only really keep what I can actively display or wear and use myself. And then I have a very small little bin of things that don't fall into that category that are meaningful to me. But I really pared it down, and that allows me to see her possessions as a source of joy rather than a source of sadness.
Can we dive in a little bit deeper there on that? We lost my father-in-law. It's been about, oh gosh, it's been 13 years now. But my mother-in-law is still alive. So she has taken on obviously most of the stuff. We did not have to take on all of his belongings. Can I ask, is your dad still alive, and did he take on most of the stuff, or did it fall on you?
Well, first of all, I'm very sorry for your loss. Even 13 years later, it doesn't really get easier when you miss somebody. So my parents were divorced before my mom passed away, but my she was remarried, to my stepdad. And yes, a fair amount fell onto my stepdad, but I was very involved when it came to her clothing and some more of those, I guess, feminine leaning stuff because I have a brother, so I'm the only girl. Jewelry, clothes, anything like that really did come to me. And the rest of it, my stepdad mostly went through. But like I said, luckily there wasn't a ton of it. And she wasn't super sentimental. So she didn't have a ton either. But even like pictures, family pictures, because he had moved into our house when I was in 10th grade. So all of the decor was related back to my mom and her side of the family. So yeah, I mean, all of that did come down to my brother and me. So I would say the majority of it was us, but we certainly had the help of my stepdad who had to manage that. And that was so hard for him. And yeah, that I think that's a different kind of a story when you're the sole, I guess, person who has to deal with it all. But here we are. I mean, we're 12 years later, and even just this year, my stepdad sent me in the mail for my birthday my mom's old Bible, which was really meaningful to him. But now, God bless, he is remarried. We love his new wife, and I think he's been able to start releasing more of my mom's stuff. And he knew that would be meaningful to me, which it was the best gift ever. I love my mom's Bible. She read it every morning. It holds so many beautiful sentiments in it. So I know that has been a decades plus long process for him for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, anyone listening to this, there's no timetable, right? There's no this has to be done immediately, unless of course there is a, location that has to be cleared out. But there are things that you are welcome to take your time on. You don't have to make these big sweeping decisions right away, generally. And then yeah, finding ways to honor. And I love what you said there about you kept the things that you could use, that you could wear, and then you do have a small box of things that don't fit into that category, but you want to have them. And that is absolutely great. I love that you give yourself grace. And yes, my heart goes out to you too. I can't, yeah, it's so difficult to lose a parent. And I haven't lost one of my parents yet, but I did. I've been with my husband for a very long time. So I felt like my father in law was part of me as well. And it doesn't get easier. And I think it's harder when you have children and they don't get to know that person. I think that's where it really gets me. It's not about the stuff. I don't, the stuff isn't it. It's that they won't ever get to have that experience with that person that you did, and that they would have the person that passed would have also just been enamored with your children as well. I think that's the hardest part.
Oh, totally. That part is by far the most devastating now that I am a mom, And even when I became a mom and had no idea what I was doing and was overwhelmed, there's no one you want to talk to more than your own mom, right? So there's that. And you make a good point that is important to reiterate, which is don't go so fast. If we're talking about sentimental items that are related to someone that you have lost versus sentimental items where, you're remembering a specific vacation with a souvenir or yearbooks from high school or that kind of thing. Those are sentimental items, but on a completely different level than sentimental items that represent someone who's no longer here. It is important to of course adopt that mindset that they aren't in the stuff and to release as much of it as necessary in order to find levity and joy within the things. However, you don't want to go so fast that you do have those regrets, right? And you don't want to be so hard on yourself and take the mindset so far that you say, I can't hold on to anything that I'm not wearing or displaying, because we are human beings. We're allowed to emote. That is okay.
Please do. It's better if you do.
Please do. In fact, That is healthy. And to have a bin, it's not sitting collecting dust where I never see it in the garage or the attic. It is in my closet, but occasionally I do revisit it because maybe there's a chatty Kathy doll from the 70s in there. My mom's name was Kathy too. And so it's like a really cool vintage thing. I have a 4-year-old daughter. I took it out, showed it to her, but I said, "We're not going to play with this until you're, a little bit older where I know you can take good care of it." But in that time when I opened it, the only other things in there really are my mom's helmet. She was a triathlete. And so to have her bike helmet from her triathlons is really special, and just one other thing. And so it's all very clear and easy to see, easy to access, easy to use as a beautiful remembrance versus sitting in a box collecting dust somewhere. And I think that is a big difference too when you're holding onto things that aren't actively being used, to ensure that you are actually enjoying them and using them as a remembrance whenever possible.
I'm Margaret.
And I'm Amy.
And together we host the podcast, What Fresh Hell? Laughing in the Face of Motherhood.
Margaret, I would say you're sort of a where are my keys kind of mom.
Correct. Sometimes a where are my kids kind of mom. Well, you're, Amy, more of a we were supposed to leave 35 seconds ago, mom.
I mean, touche. In each episode of What Fresh Hell, we come at a topic from our usually completely opposite perspectives. I bring the research.
And I bring kind of the gimlet eye. Like, is that research really going to work, people?
And almost 10 million downloads later, we're still laughing.
We also talk to experts in the parenting field, plus parents with stories we can all learn from.
We make each other laugh, we challenge each other's assumptions, and we have what we think is the best parenting community on the internet.
Check out What Fresh Hell? Laughing in the Face of Motherhood wherever you listen to podcasts.
Oh, that's a good differentiator. And I love how the examples of the things you kept, they're so unique to your mom and your relationship with her and the memories they bring up for you. So I think that's really fun. And I think a good point to make when people are listening to this, that it doesn't have to be the things that, I mean, I don't know how other people feel about those things that you kept, if they have opinions on them, but you get to keep whatever you want. And obviously keep the things that bring up these good memories for you and like spark those moments that are really those core moments and things that you think about. I just absolutely love that. I love the choices and it just sounds really fun.
Yeah, it is. I see her pink helmet and I'm like, oh, I could just see her riding her bike after going on the long run. And goodness knows I did not get the triathlete gene from my mother, unfortunately.
I'm not a triathlete either. Definitely not. Okay, so why do you feel like we are so attached to our stuff? Like, obviously, we understand why we're attached to the things that belong to the people that we've lost in our lives. That makes sense. It's finite. We know that we're like, okay, well, we're not going to make any more memories with these people. So you have that moment of like, I must clutch onto these things. And that's a grieving process. And we'll move through that as time moves on and we will make adjustments. And I think it's healthy to keep those things and look back at them and remember them. Obviously, not all of them because we still have to live our own lives. But what about the stuff that people give us when we feel this attachment to them or we feel guilt about keeping them? How do you deal with that kind of stuff in your life? How do we overcome that guilt of letting go of items that maybe someone we loved has given us, but we're like, not really my jam?
Yeah, letting go of gifts is not easy for many reasons. I actually just did a whole podcast episode on this because it is so nuanced, but there's really two parts here. There's those internal feelings that are difficult to move past. Like you said, it usually manifests as guilt. And then there's the external piece, which is the fear of what someone else might say to you if they notice that you've decluttered something they've given to you. So as far as those internal feelings go, that guilt that comes up, I encourage people to remember that guilt is, as Brené Brown says, it is kind of an arrow pointing us towards something that doesn't align with our core values. So what you're telling yourself there is that, well, my core value is to be thankful. My core value is to prioritize relationships. My core value is to be kind and loving to someone. And therefore, I feel guilty getting rid of this because it's rubbing up against those core values. So the best thing we can do there is to say, okay, well, I know I'm still grateful for it, right? I know that I still value the relationship. And I don't need the item anymore in order for those things to be true. So you can separate those things out and you can take practical steps to ensure that you really are meeting those core values. So if you want to say, oh, I'm someone who's a grateful person. Well, did you say thank you for the gift? Did you write a thank you note to them? That kind of thing is proof that you are showing gratitude towards them. Or are you showing gratitude towards them as in the relationship as a whole? They want to, or if you're grateful for someone, you reach out and ask how they're doing. You are involved with their lives, right? So if you have these kinds of things that prove your relationship is important to you, that you are great, a grateful person, then your core values are no longer being rubbed up against this idea of getting rid of the gift. So I hope that kind of makes sense. It's a pretty deep concept, but we have to separate those out. And then in terms of the fear that we feel, first of all, most people are not going to ask where their gift is. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to put that out there that we have this deep fear that this person that came to our wedding 20 years ago is going to show up at our house and be like, "Where's the crock pot? Show me the crock pot." You know what I mean? And like, most of us don't even remember what we've gifted to someone else. So, like, I do encourage you to let that go. But if you have an in law or your parent or somebody who does come over often and maybe has one of those personalities where they are going to ask where something is, I encourage you to, realize that this is a relationship issue. This is something that we can work on when it comes to our communication with that person. But you only have two options. You either decide that you want to declutter your home and not have the stress of all this stuff here, including the gifts that other people give you, or you keep it. Those are your only two choices. And I think we move through the world being like, there's got to be some perfect solution to handling, gifts that are clutter and being able to show it to the person when they come over. You cannot have both. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. You either get rid of it and you have to manage that relationship and those consequences, or you keep it and you have to manage the house full of stuff. Those are your only two options. And if you want to, we can get into more of those kind of conversations that you can have with other people, but I'll leave it there for now.
I 100% agree. And I love that idea of the reason we feel guilty is because we are having this moment where we feel like getting rid of something isn't aligning with our core values. So we just have to look at, I love how you talked about that. Like, what are our actual core values? And is that true? Right. Another Byron Katie, I like that book, I think Loving What Is. And the first question she asks is, she has these 4 questions she asks. And the first one, is that true? Does this actually go against my core beliefs? And can I be 100% certain that it's true? Like, if you say yes, am I 100% certain it's true? And oftentimes it's like, no, there are other things, there are other factors. Like you said, I showed gratitude. I am grateful. I am all these things. And absolutely, yeah, love that. That made a lot of sense. I know you were a little concerned about that, but it made sense. And then, yeah, let's talk a little bit about these tough conversations, because I think sometimes we should be having the conversation first, right? Talk to our loved ones about them. Let's tell them what we're doing. Let's inform them. Let's communicate, especially right now. This is going to come out in October. And I know like Prime Day is right around the corner. This might come out right after Prime Day. So your loved ones are already buying things for the holidays. They already are, especially if they're shoppers and they like deals. They're already on the lookout. So it is time to be having those conversations now. I did a podcast episode about this not long ago because I was like, I know Christmas is a long way off, but you got to have these conversations now because you've got to lay the groundwork. So where would you suggest someone starts with these tough conversations?
Yeah. So having the conversation is important not only on a practical level, if you give them a list or a general idea of what you do and don't have room for in your home, right? Especially when you think about gifts, maybe they're giving your kids and you're just like, hey, they're into Minecraft and Barbie and trucks. We only have room this year for, kind of mid-sized to smaller items. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do anything big that takes up space, but we so appreciate, your thought. Giving them lists and ideas, I think, is great. But the biggest thing you want to do with even with just something as simple as list giving, or if you have to have one of those hard conversations because someone's a, repeat offender of giving you too much stuff, all of it, I think the most important thing to do is lead with gratitude. And when we get into these conversations about relationships, I like to point out that while I do have my undergrad in psychology, I am not a psychologist or a therapist. So if there's a very contentious relationship in your life, that might require somebody who has a deeper understanding of all how this interrelational stuff works. Sorry, I get that word correct. But that being said, I do actually work for a therapist right now. So I do feel like I'm learning a lot all the time. And leading with gratitude is really, it's huge, right? Because there's a huge difference of when someone approaches you and says, "Can you just stop buying us all this stuff? Like, we just really don't need it." And then in your heart, you're like, "Oh my gosh, first of all, rude. Second of all, I was thinking of you." All of these defensive things kind of pop up. But if someone comes up and starts the conversation with gratitude and says, "I just want to say thank you so much for thinking of our kids so much. It's such an honor to know that, like, when you're out and about, that they're on your heart. Like, we're so lucky that they are so lucky that you're their grandparent, And you start the tone like that, there's going to be a huge difference. And the other key piece that I've come to learn, both from the psychology standpoint and just from personal experience, is to approach with curiosity. So once you say thank you so much, and then kind of offer your own vulnerable experience, saying, "We're really running out of room at our house. I'm trying to declutter so that I can feel more calm and the house doesn't get out of control as often. And, with that means that we can't have as much stuff. And so it would be so amazing if, moving forward, if you want to continue giving gifts to the kids, which we so appreciate but don't expect, if they could be maybe consumables or experiences, that kind of thing." And then if they, feel uncomfortable, which it might happen, uncomfortable conversations are part of life. You might feel a little bit awkward, but you can ask curiously, especially if they come back defensive. "Why, where does this come from that you really want to make sure that you're giving gifts to our kids, or you're giving gifts to me regularly? I'd love to learn more about where that's coming from for you." Because that gives them an opportunity to kind of dig deeper themselves and figure out, why am I doing this? Why is it so important to me? And I get so offended if someone doesn't keep what I'm giving them. And not everyone will have the capacity to go deep on that question, but it allows them that space to answer and talk about themselves. And usually, once somebody's able to identify, well, it's just because I love them so much. And then if you're able to say, well, we know that you love them so much, and this is something that we're struggling with. Or they might be able to go even deeper and say, "Well, when I was growing up, my grandparents never got me anything." Right? That not only allows them to recognize that they're projecting something onto you and your family, but also gives you a lot more empathy when they show up with something the next time, because they're not going to get it perfect moving forward, even after one conversation, right? And you have more empathy for why they're doing that, which keeps the relationship in a healthier place.
Oh, so good. And it's true. I think, well, it's so much easier to buy stuff now, right? Everything is so accessible. It's cheaper than it ever has been before. I know we're all complaining about not having enough money, but gosh almighty, we still spend way more than we've ever spent before on stuff. So let's all have a hard look at ourselves in the mirror, right? If we're struggling with or being upset that grocery prices are expensive, then cut out a Target run. Well, tough love for you there. But, I think too, and I get that growing up, things were harder. There were fewer things. People valued different things. We showed love differently. I think we lived closer to family. Like we don't live close to our family, which is, sad for us at times. And so we really have to cherish the times we do get with our families. I do also think it cuts down on any random gifts that we would get on a regular basis, because they're not coming over to our house on a weekly basis. But everything has its pros and cons. Everything has its pluses and minuses. Everything has its goods and bads, right? Every situation does. And I think we often envy other people's situations and we go, "Oh, well, they just don't understand. Like, I've got this problem." And, anyway, getting off my little soapbox now. I love what you said there about approaching it with empathy, right? Approaching it with, we were visiting our friends in Germany this summer, and he was talking about how when we don't agree with something, we always give like a good thing first. And we're like, "Oh, the compliment sandwich." It's like, "Oh, you always start with a positive and then you go with the like rub and then you end with a positive again." He's like, "Okay." And I'm like, "I guess it's kind of American." And he's like, "Yeah, that we don't do that here." And I was like, "Well, you should start doing the compliment sandwich."
I'm a big believer in the compliment sandwich. It can go a long way.
it goes a huge way. Anyway, it's just not really ingrained in their culture, which is fine. I get it. Like our German friends are very matter of fact, very straight shooters.
Oh, straightforward. Yeah, absolutely. But it's a two-way street, right? So they can be straightforward also because they don't take things as personally as a culture.
Exactly. This is very true, right? Where like, yes, sometimes they'll say something and I'm just like, huh, okay. And then I have to remind myself that it's not from a place of like where if that came from an American friend of mine, I'd be like, yeah, rude, but it's not. It's just truthful.
Well, because, our country as a whole is an individualistic culture. You know what I mean? And so when we live in an individualistic society where we're thinking about our experience as an individual way more than we're thinking about the communal experience as a whole, then that means everything that we consume and our perspective on everything that comes out of someone's mouth or anything we see, we immediately identify it as how it relates to us personally. And other cultures don't do that.
Such a good point. Such a good point. Anyway, compliment sandwich. Big fan. And it's just like what you said. I just love to put the name on it. So good. Yes, approach people with a kind comment first and then, ask for what you want, which is less stuff. And I will say one of the things we got, our daughter also is into Minecraft. We ended up getting like a code academy kind of a, coding thing. So she got to learn how to code on a computer playing Minecraft. And it was super cool. And it was this awesome experience that one of her grandmas bought her and love it. And it's great because it's educational. It doesn't take up space, but it's something like really cool that she loves doing. And we're like all about it because my husband is a software developer and he's like, yes, yeah, she'll get to know some coding. So anyway, if anyone is into Minecraft listening to this going, what could I ask my, grandparents for? That's a good one. We'll leave a link in the show notes. Not affiliated at all.
I need it. Yeah, I can't wait to get that link, honestly.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of fun things that you've mentioned and so many great tips. But if it's for somebody who's listening to this and is like, okay, this is great, but I am just starting out. It sounds like you guys have been doing this for a while, so it's easier for you. What is a realistic first step that someone can start today to help them feel less overwhelmed and start making progress?
So I think if you are someone who's like, I'm ready to dive in, but you don't know where to start, I always suggest choosing somewhere that has kind of three elements. One is that it's noticeable. So you're going to notice that you did that regularly, and that's going to motivate you to do other areas. It should be easy. There should not be sentimental items. And there are clear zones so you can start really small. So I always say a mudroom or an entryway is a really great place. You're probably not going to find sentimental items there. It's very noticeable. Every time you walk into your house, you're going to be like, ooh, look how decluttered this space is. It's going to motivate you to do more. And there's usually clear zones you can go through. You can say, I'm just going to start with the shoes here. I'm just going to start with the hat basket. I'm going to go through our tote bags, whatever you keep in that area. That's a big one. If you're someone who is not entirely sure or like mentally prepared to do an entire space, or that you are sure you want to adopt this kind of a lifestyle, I always joke, but it's not really a joke, that your underwear drawer is like a perfect place to start, okay? Because you're probably not that attached, right, to your underwear, and it has very clear things that you can get rid of. If it has holes, please get rid of it. If it is stained, oh my gosh, get rid of it, okay? And if you never wear it anymore because like you haven't worn a slip since the 1990s, then get rid of it. It's kind of clear and easy, and it's a good win because you do see it every day. You open the drawer, and how happy will you be if all your black socks are together, all your workout white socks are together, all your cozy socks are together? You pull a pair of underwear out and you don't put it back because it's the one that gives you a wedgie. You just only have the underwear that you enjoy. It's really a great experience to have a cleaned out, decluttered underwear drawer.
I love it. I am dying over here laughing. The slip from the 90s sent me reeling. Oh my God. Because I totally had slips in the 90s. I mean, I was a child. Well, no, I was a teenager, but totally. Oh my gosh. So funny. And it is true. I mean, I laugh, but it is totally true. It is super nice being able to open my drawer. And as you talked, I was like, yep, my cozy socks are together. Yep, my dark socks are together. My workout socks are together. Yep, I found a hole in my sock when I was folding laundry today, and that pair went in the trash right away. I didn't even think about it. off it went. But absolutely, it does feel nice. Oh my God. I love it so much. You're cracking me up.
Keeping it real.
So good. Keeping it real. Well, and also the zones, like the entryway. I often tell people to start in the entryway too. I love it because it makes a difference on a daily basis for you. Like you will notice it. And but I hadn't really broken it down into the three criteria. And it makes so much sense when you lay it out that way because it is something that will make your day tomorrow a little bit better, right? If you deal with one small spot in your entryway, as you leave the house, as you come home, you will feel better. It will be a better experience for you, for your family, for everyone. And then, like, my favorite is to start with knowing where the key goes. Like, just give your key a home. Like, that's it. That will change your life.
A key ring goes a long way.
Life changing to not have to stress the 5 minutes about where my key is in the morning. Oh, that was, for me, that was everything. So let's talk about your kiddos. You're a mom of three. You said one is 4. I don't know the ages of your other two, but what role do your kids play in the decluttering process? Like, do you have any tips for helping kids develop a healthy relationship with their belongings? It sounds like they've kind of grown up with it. So maybe that is a little bit different than some kids out there if their families were like mine growing up, where they had a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So my kids are 3, 4, and 6. So they're young and they're wild. And, with every human, they're all different. And so my daughter is a decluttering queen. She's the 4-year-old and she's great at it. She's like, Mom, I'm going to donate this. I'm like, great. It was 100% her idea. She organizes her room. She's amazing at it. My 6-year-old is attached to everything. If he sees me decluttering an old t-shirt of mine, he's like, no, Mommy, you should keep that. Or like, he's very attached to everything, even if it's not his. If my daughter's getting rid of something and he notices, he's like, well, can I have it? So all of our kids and and my 3-year-old, he's a little young to kind of be on the decluttering train yet and really understand it. I can still get away with just knowing what he's going to like and what he's not, like what he's going to notice missing and what he won't. And I kind of do it for him. But, I don't want anyone to think that they're doing something wrong if their kids are attached to stuff. Some kids are just more attached to things than others. And I don't have a great psychological explanation for it because my kids have been raised by the same parents in the same house and they're entire polar opposites when it comes to how they see their stuff. I'm like, did I somehow scar my oldest when he was a kid? I don't know. But I would say that the biggest thing here is having conversations with them once they kind of reach that age of 4 or 5 and they start having those opinions and they start seeing things more. It's important for me to help them understand physical boundaries. I think that's really a great way for them to digest it. As kids, they don't understand when you say we don't have room for it all. They look around the house and they're like, what are you talking about? There's plenty of room. There's that corner right there. You know what I mean? Like I just ran down the hallway. There's a floor, 100%. When we talk to our kids, it is, hey, we keep all of your stuffies fit in this basket. If they don't fit in this basket, then we have too many stuffies. That's what we allow in our home because otherwise it's going to take you a long time to clean up and it's just too much stuff. It means you're not enjoying it because you're going to forget what's at the bottom of the basket. So we really, really lean heavily on physical boundaries for my kids so that they can see that we only keep things that fit in the boundaries we have. For example, before Christmas, as we're getting to the time that you and I are talking right now, when we're prepping our home for Christmas, which I think is an important thing to do, is to I do this pretty often, but at a minimum, do it once a year before Christmas and look at everything and say, hey, if Santa's going to be bringing gifts this year, or if if we're going to be getting gifts from, our family for Christmas, I don't see any room in your basket to put them. So we probably need to make some choices of what we're going to let go of so that maybe another kid can enjoy it for Christmas because a lot of kids love secondhand gifts for Christmas. And so we can view this as a gift for somebody else because we're getting ready for the gifts we're going to get, So you just like really break it down by age, of course, age appropriate conversations. But I found that kind of approach is really helpful. And then for my son who's very attached to things and struggles with getting rid of things and being like, no, I can fit one more in my basket. I think asking him like an adult is so important. Getting curious. Why? A great example is he wanted to keep all of these number blocks, which are little tiny 1-inch cube squares that he never even watched the show Number Blocks. And they're just everywhere. And they would just get scattered about. There was no rhyme or reason to his play. It wasn't helping him on an educational level. It was just more for me to clean up because his 6-year-old brain couldn't sit there and clean up all those blocks. I have reasonable expectations for what my kids can do and what they can't when they're cleaning. And, picking up 150 to 200 little blocks, I know is too much for a 6-year-old. And I was annoyed with it. And so I was like, hey, bud, I think we should maybe consider donating your number blocks. And he was like, no. And I said, well, can you tell me why you like your number blocks? And he was like, well, let me tell you. I like to take them to my top of my bunk bed, and then I push them through this hole right here, and I like watching them drop to the floor. And I laughed. I was like, well, this makes sense, 'cause that's where I find all of them, is all over under his bunk bed. And so I said, Betty, that sounds like a fun game. And I think that's really cool. What if we just kept the green ones, because green's your favorite color, and you could just put the green ones through the top of your bed? I wasn't sitting there trying to get him to be an adult. If he thinks pushing number blocks through a bunk bed is fun, by all means, buddy, get after it. But we don't need 200 of them in order for you to enjoy that activity. So we ended up keeping like 10 green number blocks, and he pushes them through his bed, and the rest went to donation. So I think talking to our kids and finding that compromise that feels good for them is huge.
That is super fun. Also, get a basket underneath, and now it's like a game of, can I get him in the basket?
Wait a minute. Level 2 unlocked. I love it.
Now he has somewhere to aim. This is so fun. And I really appreciate what you said there about having age appropriate expectations for them too, right? Obviously, we're not going to go from 0 to 100. We're not going to go from kids being virtual, hoarders and wanting to have everything they've ever touched in their room to being minimalists. And I also don't expect my daughter to be a minimalist. Like, I'm the one that wants the least amount of stuff in our home. Actually, that might not be true. It might be my husband. It depends on what it is. Depends on the thing. Guitars, no, that's his. He's like, can I have another one, please? I'm like, you've got a few. But, right, with other things, it's, anyway, we ebb and flow. And this is the thing about humans. And this is why it's so important we do our own stuff, is because your stuff and what you find important is so different than what other people find important. And you have to do that work yourself. You have to have that curious moment and ask yourself those questions first, so you know what to even think about to ask your kids. I appreciate so much that you said, let's have a conversation with them and just ask and dig a little bit. Go below the surface level. They're not doing it to make you angry. They're not throwing the bricks all over the room so that you come in and step on them. There's something behind it. And I love that you dug in and found out what the reason was. And hey, that sounds fun. I mean, yeah, guys being guys. I love it.
It's a cool new game. Never before done.
Well, and their imagination is so lovely, right? And we definitely don't want to squash that. No, I absolutely love it. It's fantastic. Well, Shannon, this has been so fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Love to continue, but I know my listeners like to get on with their day. So where can people find you and connect? Because I know they're going to want to continue the conversation with you.
Oh, good. Oh, well, thank you. The first place I would say is that if you're a podcast listener, I also have a podcast, the Paring Down podcast. So paring doesn't have an I in it in this case, but you can find me there wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can watch it on YouTube. My channel is just Paring Down. And then I do have a YouTube channel that is a new video every Friday if you like to consume that way. I have my Instagram account, which is at paring_down. Again, no I in paring. And then my website is theexpertbeginner.com, and you can get all my free resources there. I also have a complete guide to decluttering kids stuff if that's something that you struggle with, a free Know Your Why worksheet, a bunch of different digital products like that. You can all find along with my blog. Forgot I also have a blog, and you can sign up for my newsletter all on the website. There's a lot going on.
I was going to say, you are a busy woman. Whew. You got lots going on. I love it.
I am. I also have a job, so it's like, it's a busy time in life, but it's fun. I love it so much.
Well, we will link to all of it in the show notes so people can easily get there and find you for sure. All right, but my favorite way to finish every episode is with 3 rapid fire questions. So the first one is, what does clutter-free mean to you?
Clutter-free to me just means that everything around you is intentional, and that you chose it because you love it and or use it regularly. And that can go for your schedule or your stuff or your beliefs. It's something that you chose with intention to be there.
So good. Number 2, what's making you happy right now or in this season of life?
Honestly, my work. I mean, that kind of explains why I have so much of it going on, but I truly love helping women de-stress and let go of the things in life that don't truly matter.
And number 3, what's a goal you have for yourself this year?
Okay, so right now I'm working on my book proposal, and I self-published a book in 2020, but it has been my dream to get a lit agent and do traditional publishing, and so that proposal I hope will be going out in the next couple months, and we'll see if I can get myself a lit agent.
Fantastic. Congratulations. Well, I wish you the best on that. That's amazing. Very cool. Yeah, awesome. All right, Shannon, thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too, thanks, Deanna.
Well, I feel like I could have chatted with Shannon for ages, and I love how similarly we look at decluttering, especially with our families. But I would love to know your thoughts on this episode and our conversation. So if you do want to leave a comment or join in the conversation, well, come on over to Facebook. I'm there at the Wannabe Minimalist family group in our private community over there, and we can have a conversation about this podcast episode, or you can join me over on Instagram at Wannabe Clutter Free. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to continue to get decluttering and organization inspiration sent to you every week. Thanks again to Shannon for joining us and offering us such amazing advice. I will be back here next week when I will be chatting with Sarah Horgan about how her stage 4 cancer diagnosis changed her perspective on perfectionism and people pleasing and how it impacted her approach to decluttering. It's a very moving conversation, and I know you're going to enjoy it. So until next time, keep things simple. Keep thinking clutter free, work on that compliment sandwich, and please remember that I believe in you and I know you can reach your goals. I'm Deanna Yates, and you've been listening to Wannabe Clutter Free. I'll see you next week. Cheers.